So this video contains minor spoilers for Angel Beats. If you haven't seen the show, just do yourself a favor and go watch it. Fuck it, I'm gonna lead with this. Angel Beats is the only piece of media that has brought me to tears. Genuine tears. Red Dead Redemption 2's ending thought it had me, but I resisted. Rain on Me thought it had me, but I steeled myself so I wouldn't look like a little bitch in front of my mother. But it was fucking Angel Beats that got me in the end. Normally, I don't feel anything special when it comes to watching this kind of show where the premise is depressing, though in this case comical at times, and the ending is super sweet and supposed to be tear-jerking, but something about Angel Beats made my eyes do the whole weird sweating thing. My name's Luke Item, and in this video I'll be trying to figure out why, of all things, this was the one that broke my... Wait, what are those things called again? Tear ducts. Made me break my tear ducts. No, that was wrong. That doesn't sound right. So Angel Beats is an anime series written by Jun Maeda. The series ran for 13 episodes that aired from April to June of 2010. The story revolves entirely around the themes of death and reincarnation, but also manages to convey far more through its individual characters, of which there are plenty, trust me. So the story follows Yuzuru Otonashi as he arrives in the afterlife completely devoid of his memories. But this afterlife isn't as he imagined because it looks like a school campus. Confused on what was going on, he finds a purple-haired girl in front of him aiming down the scopes of a sniper rifle. She immediately asks him to join her organization, the Afterlife Battlefront, explaining that he has died soon after the fact. Of course, Otonashi has many questions, but the girl continues on and introduces their enemy, a white-haired kudere who they call Angel. The Afterlife Battlefront hates Angel because she is always enforcing the Afterlife School's rules, but the Afterlife Battlefront refuses to accept that they have died, and they fight her while also causing trouble for the rest of the inhabitants of the school, who act more like NPCs in a video game. But anyway, Otonashi approaches Angel and begins to converse with her, seeing her as just any other person. They begin to talk, and Angel repeats once more that he is dead. Still in disbelief, Otonashi says to prove it, which she demonstrates by killing him as he would respawn straight after. So Otonashi dies a few more times before waking up in the company of people from the Afterlife Battlefront, bickering about the name of their organization. We're then introduced to the concept of being obliterated, the big thing that everyone in the Battlefront fears, to move on from their state of limbo they currently inhabit and be reincarnated to the next life, unsure of whether they would be reincarnated as a human or, as some of them would point out, a barnacle. But they claim that you can stay in this world as long as you keep fighting Angel and resisting the school's rules. So Otonashi is once again invited to join, and not seeing any other options, he accepts the offer. The purple-haired girl introduces herself as Yuri, and the show truly begins. The people who occupy the school are those who have experienced some kind of trauma, or left with massive regrets in their previous lives. While everyone in the school is different, they all have one thing in common. They refuse to accept that they have died and want to continue to live. Thus, they are hanging in the perpetual state of limbo that they are currently in. Angel Beats truly leans into this innate fear of death present in everyone, along with the 5 stages of grief that one goes through when they go through a bad experience. Though they are dead and they know it, the students refuse to go with the flow, and they choose to instead fight against God, who they blame for everything that happened in their lives up to their deaths, including their deaths. But as it would turn out, Angel, or her real name, Kanade Tachibana, was not bad at all. Instead, as the acting student body president of this afterlife school, she was the one who wanted to help everyone by moving them on to the next life. And she was non-aggressive, only fighting when the students from the Afterlife Battlefront would engage her, often randomly starting to shoot at her with guns when they see her. Otonashi is probably one of the most tragic characters I've come across, and we see this come to light throughout the show once he starts to regain his memories. Our amnesia-struck protagonist has a backstory that is super depressing, but not unfathomably so like you often see, and everything he went through in his previous life is believable, and could very well be close to the story of someone living out there today. As a person, he was devoid of any hope or a sense of purpose, but continued on so that he could attempt to make his little sister enjoy what she had left of her life, even though she was bedridden in a hospital and was unable to leave. When winter came, he started to plan to take his sister out on Christmas and let her see whatever she wanted, even though her condition had only continued to worsen. So he took on many part-time jobs in addition to his already existing city traffic job, so he'd have lots of money to treat her on that special day. When the time came, he ended up sneaking her out of the hospital to take her to go see the main street, as she requested, which was decorated for Christmas, the trees adorned with lights. But then we see Otonashi after his sister passes, seconds later. He realizes that she was the purpose that he had in his life all along, just to make her smile and to try and make her enjoy life, even though she was stuck in a hospital bed. Now that she was gone, he truly had no purpose like he felt he didn't before. And without her, he finds himself questioning, since her life had drawn to a close, had his also ended? But in his despair, he receives a glimmer of hope when he sees a doctor wishing a young girl well after she was discharged from a hospital. Otonashi resolved that he would become a doctor so that he could let people like his sister live a better life by curing them of illness and setting them free of their hospital ward. So, in a really twisted and realistic way, his sister's premature death gave him something to strive for, a purpose that, for once in his life, was truly his own. And so he did, studying and gaining entry into medical school, only for it all to come crashing down when an earthquake struck as he was on a train. The regret he was left with was that he never helped anybody in the end. Or so he thought. By this time, he has already seen one of his new friends become obliterated, but it was not bad in the slightest. Instead, she was obliterated by resolving her past regrets and accepting what had happened to her, setting her free of the shackles that bound her to her previous life and allowing her soul to move on to the next. So, armed with a new resolve, Otonashi decides to help everyone else move on too, so that they can be happy for one, and two, so he can also solve his own regrets and hopefully move on himself. But it seems that we've gotten a little off topic, considering that the whole reason I'm writing this script right now and editing the video later is that I want to answer the question of why, of all things, this made me cry. Well, I'd be lying if I said that Otonashi's character wasn't a huge part of it, but there's something else, something that I mentioned briefly earlier. As weird as it sounds, I have always been obsessed with the concept of life and death. What happens when we die? How do we function? What is a soul and does it exist? Is being alive and aware of the will of some higher power, or a natural occurrence that couldn't be helped, and just means nothing in the grand scheme of things? Needless to say, those are not things that a teenager should be thinking about, but hey, I've always been kind of screwed up. But those questions and that fascination that I have is why I think I've always been interested in the 5 stages of grief since I first learned about the concept. And the way I came about it was quite bizarre too. In fact, it was through a YouTube video of people trying to determine a hidden meaning to Majora's Mask of all things and prove that Link died in the beginning cutscene. But anyway, the 5 stages of grief are 5 touchstones that explain the grieving process of human beings, at a very basic level that is. And Angel Beats with its character development ties into this perfectly, so much so that it was probably intentional. And that is why when I discuss Angel Beats with others, they may refer to it as a drama or a slice of life, while I always talk about it and refer to it as a tragedy. But anyway, the 5 stages are as follows: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The 5 stages of grief normally are used when talking about a divorce, people grieving over a loved one, or even those lying on their deathbeds. In the case of Angel Beats, the characters are in a state where they've died. There's no turnaround for them. They're done. Their life is done. Gone. And now they're just hanging out in limbo, knowing they are dead, and they can't do anything about it. They're completely powerless over it. So I know those still watching at this point are probably thinking that I'm insane or that I'm reading way too far into it, which to be honest I probably am. But regardless, as any lawyer, including aspiring ones such as myself, must do, is make their case. So I'll be going through every stage and talking about where it can be seen in the show. So denial is probably the easiest to place, as I've already spoken on how the students in the Battlefront refuse to acknowledge the fact that they are dead. And that's one of the reasons that they are so touchy whenever it comes to deciding a new name for the Afterlife Battlefront, because they don't want it to make it sound like they are dead. And while I know they're quite plain about the fact that they have died, they don't act like it makes a difference and refuse to let it change what they are doing and keeping them from having their own free will. Anger is also quite an easy one to place because they blame God or whatever being there may be for everything that happened to them. While denial is a coping mechanism, anger is a mask that they can hide behind, shifting the blame onto others for their regrets and traumas. In this case, God and Kanade, though for Kanade they have no good reason. As for God, this is a common one to shift the blame onto in any situation, because as they see it, if God is so great and merciful, why did they make me suffer, and why did they kill me? In fact, this is actually a common thought that's recorded among people who are terminally ill with something like cancer. The third stage of bargaining is slightly harder to make a case for, as it ties directly into anger. Let's put ourselves in the mind of Otonashi for this example. Even though he wasn't shown as thinking of this is purely to show what he could have thought. If my sister hadn't died, I never would have trained to be a doctor. I never would have been on that train during the earthquake. And if we want to tie that into anger at God, if God had just let my sister live a normal life, we could have been a normal family and gone places together. It would have all been different. I find that to be a pretty good example on how one may bargain. And there are better examples in the show, yes, but for the sake of not spoiling everything that happens, I'm not going to give those examples. And yes, I am very aware that that is a pretty convenient excuse to use in this case. By the fourth stage, one has started to come to terms with what has happened to them, falling into a depression. During this stage, one would continue on aimlessly, or lose focus on what else matters to them. It is also the stage that memories would come back to people and their regrets would grow. This is a stage that we see Otonashi go into immediately after reclaiming a portion of his memories. When everything comes back to him, we see him enveloped in sadness and see him temporarily shut himself off from the others, as he starts to think about how everything he did, everything he worked towards becoming a doctor, amounted to nothing in the end. The final stage is the hardest to get to, because of the consuming nature of the previous stage. Accepting an inconvenient truth is never easy for anyone, whether it be getting rejected romantically, not making into a school or program you apply to, or getting fired. Humans often refuse to accept things that they do not like. A good recent example is the people of Florida refusing to acknowledge COVID-19. But that's a whole other ball of wax that I, needless to say, don't want to get into in a video about anime. Regardless, we see all the main characters fight through the stages and emerge on top, solving their regrets and accepting the fact that they died, and the natural thing being to move on. So that's my case of the 5 stages of grief's role in Angel Beats, and how I cheesily tie together the end of my video. But to answer the question, why did this make me cry? Well, I found myself sympathizing with all the characters and coming to care for them enough to want to see them resolve their regrets and remove themselves from the pits of despair they found themselves in. And getting to see them all move on and see Otonashi especially finally realize how valuable his life was. Because of him alone, the others were given a second chance at life, whether it was their previous ones or the ones that they are moving on to now. But it sucks to see that he had to die and continue to suffer in order for him to finally realize that. So it was a mix between happiness and despair, even in the final moments of Angel Beats, that got me in the end. And the fate that Otonashi was left with at the very end hit me like a sucker punch. And after seeing the extra OVA type 2-minute thing that came with the Blu-ray disc for the first time when writing this video, that's called Another Epilogue, by the way, it made it even more depressing, as it confirmed what I thought had happened to Otonashi by the end, which honestly is probably the saddest part of the show, because you get to see him suffer and then nothing comes from it, nothing good. So it got me again. The show had me crying again when I rewatched the ending for this video. God damn it, And apparently I've gone soft. Hey, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll stream 4 days a week over on Twitch, so make sure to check that out for streams and such. I may even be live right now. But if I'm not, there are always more videos to check out on the channel if you are interested. And without further ado, have a good day.